All right. Make sure this is all set up. Perfect. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Cannabis Marketing Live. Today, we'll be covering the latest trends in cannabis marketing. Guillermo Bravo, and I'm the Chief Scalable, Sustainable Growth by enabling businesses to directly connect with consumers through a multi-touch attribution model, unlocking every step of the buyer's journey. I'm joined by Amy Larson. Amy was named one of NCIA's top 10 influential women in 2018. Amy brings a strategic, integrated approach to the marketing ecosystem in order to support and help drive customer engagement and meet revenue goals. Welcome to the show, Amy. How are you?
I'm great, Guillermo. It's great to see you again. Thanks so much for having me on. And that's an interesting bio. You know, you write those things, and then it's you hear someone else read it, and it's like, wait, I said that? That makes me sound really smart.
Don't be so humble. You are really smart. Come on.
Oh,
You've been in the cannabis space for so let's just start with that.
Yeah, sure. So, and Guillermo, just so you know, I'm getting a little bit of a delay from you. So if I don't respond right away, I'm sorry about that. But no, I actually spent many years working in PR and marketing, really in the tourism industry, and I did a lot of work with consumers, resorts, destinations. So really, my transition into the cannabis industry was actually through a cannabis tourism company back when Colorado first legalized back in 2014. So, I've been working in the industry for 7 years, and it feels like dog years, and it makes me feel like it makes me feel like an old lady at this point. But more to your point, I worked at a marketing agency, and I launched the cannabis division there. After about 3 years, I moved to a company called Simplifya. And Simplifya is a compliance SaaS. And I ran their marketing, rebrand, managed all their PR for about 2.5 years. And then I was lucky enough to join a company called Tilt Holdings this summer, where I get to work a lot in marketing, communications, but also operations, and working with a lot of the brand partners that we work with at Tilt, because we have East Coast plant touching operations. So it's been a fun ride, and it's been a crazy ride, but I love the industry. I love being in the industry, and so and I love talking about marketing. I also just wrapped up my term as the chair of NCIA's Marketing and Advertising Committee after serving on that for 4 years. So it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for joining me, and I applaud you on your journey from Simplifya marketing agency to Tilt, and with the Tilt relationship now, like what marketing trends are you currently trying to capitalize on, since you're direct to consumer with your brand?
So Tilt's kind of we're in an interesting position because we have both B2B subsidiaries. We Jupiter, which is one of the biggest C-cell distributors and vape hardware manufacturers, is very much a B2B sale. We have B2B, wholesale in our markets in Pennsylvania. But then, yes, of course, there is, consumer touching outreach that we need to do with our vertically integrated retail operations in Massachusetts. So, as we look at trends in cannabis marketing, depending on what your audience is, it always changes a little bit. But I think some of the things, some of the stalwarts of cannabis marketing are really, it's education. It's all about, making sure we're educating consumers and educating our customers, and really not taking for granted that they know as much about the plant and as much about the industry as we do. I think with the rise of platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels, I know we're kind of limited in what we do, but it's just reinforced the fact that video is a really powerful tool that we can be using in our arsenal. Obviously, we still have to deal with Instagram, Facebook, social media, all of those restrictions. I'm not sure they're going to go away anytime soon, but I think that some of the biggest trends, and maybe not necessarily trends, but things that I think people kind of forget about, especially if you are a if you're a retail operator, if you're a brand, is really focusing on the basics. Make sure you have good SEO, good local SEO, that you're doing a lot of organic content, because if you can be seen as an authentic brand in the space, then people are going to trust you, and you're going to be able to grow, that trust in your brand, and, subsequently grow your revenues. So, maybe not too super trendy, but I think there are a lot of things that, that we as cannabis marketers, we always go, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. There's a lot of things that we can do. And one last note I made was, as we're now coming back out of COVID, people are ready to get together again for the most part. We want to be with each other. I mean, look at the turnout at MJBizCon. And I think translating some of that energy to some experiential pop-ups, events, stuff like that, I think people are ready to start getting back together with people. And so as it's appropriate and allowed in your market, being able to connect with your consumers directly, I think we're going to see a big rise in those types of events as we kind of come out of this crazy pandemic.
Agreed. I mean, it was a great time in Vegas, for Weed Week, MJBizCon, MJ
Unpacked. Yeah.
All the great parties, finally seeing everyone after a couple of years. It was just nice. Nice to spend time with people. Yeah.
It definitely was. And it was very, I left it exhausted. I know we all do. We all leave those shows exhausted, but it was so energizing to be back with people again. And I think that maybe this industry more than others, I think we need that energy. And so it was awesome. I was so glad to be back in Vegas.
I even clocked 30,000 steps on one of the days. I had my watch on here, and I was blown away. It was quite a long day and just week. And you touched on a lot of things that I want to talk a little bit more on in education. Like, how do you educate your consumers or the bud tenders? Like, maybe give me a couple examples on really effective strategies to.
Sure. So actually, one of my favorite companies, they've long held, a place in my heart. And I worked with them in the very early days, like 2016, when they launched. And that company is called Papa and Barkley, and they very much have positioned themselves as a health and wellness type company. And I think really explaining to people how the plant is beneficial, what all of the things that, that it can be used for, from pain relief to, to stress relief. I think we're also in a place now where we need to start kind of breaking down those old barriers that we've all been, I grew up in the DARE generation. I grew up just say no. That's what we were taught. And so I think starting to break down some of that stigma, I think is a big challenge that we have ahead of us. But when we're talking to bud tenders, when we're talking to consumers, I think I think talking about how this plant or your product or your brand can benefit the consumer. What are the things in it that it's natural? Are we doing solventless extraction? Are we doing, you can use it topically. This is how the entourage effect works. I think those of us who have either lived in legal markets or worked in the market for any amount of time, we take for granted that people in, a lot of Midwest states, people, even living in Colorado, we've had a legal market for 7 years now. Less than half of the counties in the state have retail dispensaries. There's either retail or medical dispensaries. So less than half the state, has access to it. And we just kind of take for granted that everybody knows that we know. And so I think when we tackle education, we need to come from a very, a very friendly, a very informative, a very collaborative perspective, and not just a condescending, oh, you don't know about weed. Oh, this is what, there's a lot of that kind of, oh, if you don't know, then you're not on the level. But I think we just have to break down those barriers and welcome more people into the industry and into all of the benefits that this plant provides. That was a really long answer.
Agreed. Yeah, no, agreed. And it takes a uniform message too, right? You need to
It
have the
does.
same marketing material, same language across different states. It's still not uniform
Right.
yet, but we're making progress. And yeah, just focusing on the basics. So not everyone is, been in the space since 1996 in California. Like
Right.
some
Right.
people just get into the space, and they, a common question I have from people getting into the space is like, what's the equivalent of a couple drinks of alcohol? Like, what would be the equivalent in
Yeah.
cannabis? And I always, recommend them to start slow and then go from there. And
Right.
doing edibles, make sure that you wait an hour or two before you start to
Mhm.
increase the doses. So,
And
whether
I was just going to say, from a technical perspective, Guillermo, you brought up marketing materials, and one of the things that I think we kind of overlook, and it's an issue that we've actually been, working with one of our brand partners on, is as brands start thinking about potential interstate expansion, like going into new markets, what you're doing in California is not going to fly in a medical market in Pennsylvania. We've had, it may not even fly in, what's a relatively new adult use market in Massachusetts. What the things that we're doing, it's kind of crazy. I mean, we had to, in one of the brands that we work with in our Massachusetts market is a company, is Old Pal. And obviously Old Pal is built on, very shareable brand. And, we had to take, because our retail outlets are still medical, we have not begun adult use sales. We had to take shareable off the packaging because you don't share your medicine. So there are little, there are things like that, as brands think through their messaging, their verbiage. The Pennsylvania Department of Health right now is a nightmare, and you have to have every single piece of marketing material approved by the Department of Health. We actually had to go through and take the word cannabis off of everything, and it was because you can only say medical marijuana. And you can sell flower in Pennsylvania, but you can't market it as smokable. So to marketers out there, to operations people, when you're starting to think about expanding, make sure you know the regulations, make sure you know what kind of market that you're going into. It's we've made it so difficult we haven't. Regulators have made it so difficult.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I know, like, compliance and regulation is obviously top of mind and kind of the first step before you do anything, right? So
Right.
ensuring that you're within the guidelines of the state or the regulatory company, just making sure that we are compliant. That's all that matters. And doing it right. As far as criteria and framework for vetting, selecting market initiatives, like how do you choose kind of your next campaign?
Well, how do you choose your next campaign, and on, how do you choose what market is the right market for your product? So, as you choose your next campaign and how you're going to go about it, there are kind of top level rules. There's always like a 70-30 has to be over 21, or 80-20, or, it kind of varies state by state. But I've always encouraged marketing people to think a little bit out of the box, because to some extent we're a little bit limited in what we can do from like a SEM, digital marketing, and digital ad buys. But there are things like, in Colorado, billboards were not allowed until like a year ago. So cannabis industry throughout the state basically sponsored all of the highway cleanup signs. Like 70% of the highways in Colorado were sponsored by cannabis dispensaries and cannabis brands. So there are ways to do that kind of out of home advertising in a way that, people will see it, but sometimes you have to think a little bit out of the box.
Exactly. And you brought up a great point in regards to SEM and different advertising you can do. We've actually cracked the code on that one. So, ensuring that we can keep Google ads and Bing ads up through landing pages, through more conservative keyword copy. And then, we have, I think, 5 full-time Google Ads certified engineers that all they do.
Yeah.
And we're spending like $500,000 a month right now client. It's a lot managing 1,000 campaigns, but it's been effective, and that's why we really took the liberty in trying to figure out a way to scale this business, just so that we want to see dispensaries and brands successful. So it's been a phenomenal channel for us while the SEO kind of kicks in, right?
It takes a little while.
6 months, 10, 12 months to kick in. Google Ads, we can have orders in 3 days.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's good to combine the organic search, paid search, and then programmatic, and also direct mailers have been really great for us.
See, traditional, people don't think about traditional.
Leads through a QR code. Exactly. So there's a lot you can do, and it's like you said, it's education for the consumers. And also education for retailers and brands on what the capabilities available are, right?
Exactly. No, that's 100% correct. And I think, as people are trying to put their plans together and understanding, what they can do, I'm always a big proponent of making sure you know what your strategy is. What are you trying to accomplish? Does throwing a big party at MJBizCon make sense for your brand? Maybe it does, 100%, but maybe it doesn't. And you've now put all of your eggs in one basket. And so to your point, when we're talking all of those different types of tactics, when we're talking like an omni-channel approach, I always like to encourage people to think about your marketing and PR approach the same way we think about the cannabinoids in the plant. Look at it from an entourage effect perspective, right? Everything works together. Everything builds on each other. You do just one thing and you might have success. But if you look at everything and make a very holistic, integrated plan, then you're going to see the impacts much more quickly.
Exactly. And making sure that you're speaking the same language across all channels and platforms, that's key. Consistency as well. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges that we have to deal with, and maybe that's the next question here is, what are the challenges facing the industry, especially for growth companies?
So challenges as it relates to marketing, or challenges just in the industry?
In regards to marketing,
So challenges as it pertains to marketing is still going to be, a lot of the social media restrictions that we've seen. Those aren't going anywhere anytime soon until we see some form of federal legalization. And so, from both a marketing and an industry perspective, that's one of the biggest challenges that we see. I think also, even as new states come on board and new states begin to legalize, it's going to go back to that education piece and to informing piece. People who don't understand the plant, don't understand the industry, don't understand the economic development that it can bring, are going to continue to put in stupid rules that would not apply to anybody else. They don't apply to alcohol. They don't apply to tobacco. They don't apply, you open any magazine and how many prescription drug ads do you see, right? We don't even, there's going to be a huge mindset that the country is going to have to overcome. But I think the biggest challenge that we're going to continue to face is uninformed and somewhat arbitrary regulations that keep the industry from competing as any other, legal market should be able to.
Yeah, and top of that list is banking, right? Finance. Banking, that's and then also writing off your marketing efforts on your taxes, the fact that you can't do that. Those are two major ones. Banking
and 280E, and God bless, Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker, but you know what? We're not going to get all encompassing legalization passed in one fell swoop. Can we just give cannabis a level playing field, please?
Exactly. Give us the tools so that we're successful, right?
Yes. Yep.
And I know that you do a lot of mentoring. What's one piece of advice you can give to one of your mentees, as a new marketer entering the cannabis industry?
So as when I'm talking to individuals or to companies who are, looking for, okay, I want to get into cannabis. How do I get into cannabis? And kind of my steadfast line is you have to get involved. This industry is very much still built on who you know, who you trust, who respects you, who trusts you. It's still very much a kind of a word of mouth and reputation growth type industry. And so I always tell people, find your local, what's your local cannabis association at a state level, at a national level. There are, at least pre-COVID, there were always, meetups happening. There were things happening. And so I always say, get involved, get to know people, and also do your research and know if you're not coming from the cannabis industry, but you have a skill set that's, let's say you're accounting, or say you're a packaging compliance specialist, or, you have, or supply chain, or whatever that happens to be, or, if you're a great SEO, SEM, marketer in other industries, make sure you know what your strength is and see your path forward to how you can bring that skill set into the industry. And how you can fit into that conversation. And so I think those are understanding where you want to go in the industry. I get less and less, as I'm sure you do, Guillermo, of I want to work in weed, I want to work in cannabis. And it's like, well, why?
Yeah.
What about it is important to you? And what about it? And where can you fit in? So those are kind of like my base level, like get involved and do your research and know how you can fit in. And I always also like to tell people to, if they think, this brand is amazing, well, what can you do to start to engage with that brand, and how do you want to work with them, and what about it do you like? And, so understanding more than just, the surface level shiny object, know what the company is that you're pursuing. So it's, that's kind of like my base level, and whether it's a brand or it's a person looking to get into the company, is to know who you are and what you stand for, and be authentic and be genuine to that, because the shady players are shaken out. I will say, as I'm sure 5-6 years ago, it was kind of mind blowing, like the number of people who would ghost you and blow you off and doing shady stuff. And those people have, the light has begun to be shown on those people. And I think the industry has grown up and legitimized a lot, kind of at warp speed. But you have to be true. You have to be authentic to who you are, and because otherwise people are going to see right through it. And don't just get in it for the money. Yeah,
exactly. And you brought up a great point. You need to do your research before you get into space. What are some publications or must-read books that you'd recommend to anyone joining the industry?
So must-read books. Here, I'll show you my bookshelf right here. Branding Bud. I love this book. This is a great one. And also for people who are looking to learn a little bit more, this book is called Cannabis is Medicine. Love it. And for my ladies out there, I love this book. That's A Woman's Guide to Cannabis. I gifted this to like a dozen of my friends last Christmas. So those are kind of my must reads from a book perspective. From like an everyday staying on top of the industry. I love Marijuana Moment. I want to know what's going on regulatory at the level. MJBiz Daily, MG, Weed Week, I love. So there are a lot of, I think Trichomes has a publication out now. There are so many newsletters out there. It can get a little bit overwhelming, but those are the ones I kind of try to make sure that I read, daily or weekly to know what's going on, especially since we work in multiple different markets.
Agreed. And add that to your RSS feed or join their email list, follow them on social, just make sure you're on top of everything that's going on. It's changed. It changes every week. So
right. And those, when you know what's going on, it gives you an opportunity to hop in and be a thought leader and to start to develop your own reputation, the reputation of your company. So make sure you're maximizing the tools that are already out there for you.
Exactly. And what advice do you have for new brands in terms of market research? Like what should a new brand be looking for when considering the creation of a new product, a new edible or strain?
I obviously do your research, and know, and, you know, there are some great research companies out there. BDSA still does great research. Headset does great research. Understand, you know, how, if you're looking to get in the edibles category, how is the edibles category performing in your market? Right. And is it edibles, or is it drinks, or is it mints? Is it sublinguals? Like, what is it? Pills? Is it drop? You know, I mean, we could go on down the line, but understand how edibles are performing within your market, and also look and see, like, if you want to roll out another gummy, who are your gummy competitors? What are they doing? If that's really where you want to go, then identify what's your differentiator? Why would people choose yours over Juana's or somebody else's gummies? So, you know, knowing how that category is performing, combined with knowing who your competitors are, and also look at, like, what are predictive trends for growth. Flower is always going to be king. How much of the edibles market are drinks going to take up? How much of the market, you know? So there's some of that, and knowing, you know, rolling out another drink because everybody and their brother's rolling out another drink is not necessarily the best business plan, especially if you don't have the capability to do that from a production perspective. You know, I always like to tell people, you know, there's a niche for everyone. You don't have to look like everybody else that's coming down the pike. But know what your challenges are going to be, and know what your opportunities are going to be going into that space in your market. And my other recommendation along those lines, sorry, is if you're doing great in the edibles market and the gummies market, you know, I think one of the downfalls that we're going to start seeing is some of these brands who are just getting too wide. You don't necessarily need 85 SKUs to be successful. Do what you do it well, and own that. You know, you don't have to, if you're in edibles, then, oh, okay, we're going to do chocolates, and we're going to do topicals, and now we're going to do capsules, and now we're going to do this and this and this. Like, be successful at what you do. Go deeper rather than wider, because some of your brands, when you start rolling out all those SKUs, you're going to, you know, it's going to drop off. You're not going to get penetration. So be very, very mindful about capturing and owning the market that you're in first before you expand to 1,000 other things. We don't all have to have ADD, shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. What's the saying? Jack of all trades, the master of none, right?
Yep.
Well, Amy, I really, really appreciate you joining me today. I've learned a lot, and I hope our audience does as well. And thank you for sharing your insights. And, you know, if you'd like to share your social media profiles, your company domain name, feel free. Like, where can people find you?
Sure. No, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. It's just look up Amy Larson. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's Amy Larson _CO. I don't post as much there, but you know, I'm on LinkedIn pretty frequently. If you want more information on Tilt, it's tiltholdings.com. And you can find us under our subsidiaries online, Jupiter Research, Commonwealth Alternative Care, and Standard Farms. So.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Amy.
My pleasure.
Connecting with you soon.
Thanks so much, Guillermo. It was great to chat today.
Likewise.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.